Hello everyone. Very warm welcome to Selenium Xpath tutorial by Edureka. My name is Ramesh and I'll be taking up this webinar, and we'll be discussing a few things on the Selenium and its component. Within a day we cannot do everything, or within an hour we cannot do everything. So I'll try to leverage as much as information as possible, and I'll try to give you some good insights which can help you out. All right. We'll just give a brief introduction to what exactly is Selenium, introduction to XPath, XML documentation, benefits of XPath, syntax and terminologies, types of XPath, and finally XPath function. And if possible, we'll go ahead with a short demo here with hands-on. Okay, so let's get into Selenium. Now, Selenium started off in 2001 as a project. Officially, they released their product in 2004. From 2004 onwards, it was one of the best tool which was been in the market until today. If you talk about, there is no other tool which can really compete with Selenium as per the plug and play and the technology which they have in terms of the interaction at the backend, and highly performance oriented, multiple language binding, multiple operating system binding, and multiple browser equipped tool, and that too completely free of cost. So to be very honest, this is one of the best thing which has happened in the market. So how things can help us in terms of automation, and how things can help up with Selenium. If you talk about, you have manual testing which can be having test cases. You have to execute all the test cases one by one. You have to do the reporting all by yourself, and you have to update everything in terms of pass fail results. If there is a fail, you have to create a bug and so on, take screenshots, which will take a longer duration. And also, when we talk about manual intervention, after performing the same job again and again, you will get bored about the topic or the test cases. It will be time consuming to execute the test cases. It is tedious to maintain and manage the entire manual testing flow with the reporting structure. And also, we are human beings, we might tend to do some mistakes which can be affecting our quality process. When it comes to automation, you can do all these things via automated way using the automated softwares, which can also generate automatic reports for us with respect to pass fail. And if you are writing a very good code, even you can log a bug in terms of using listeners and so on the bug tracking tools, and manage the show as well completely. That's how you can go ahead. But to be very honest, that is completely advanced coding, for which you have to know very good coding knowledge, and also the design patterns and different combinations in the advanced coding aspects. But when you talk about normal automation itself, it's going to give you a lot of benefits. Like, say, the execution will be faster because it's a machine to machine communication. It's going to be more accurate because it's the ASCII value comparison. The investment in human resources will be less, because once you are going to do the automation code, you can run it again and again. You can focus on to new features, and you can make sure the quality of the product is going to be much better. It supports various kinds of testing, like, say, you talk about manner, like, say, functionality testing or non-functionality testing and so on. It can really work into picture. Selenium majorly focuses on the functionality testing. If you want to execute on a daily basis the entire regression suite, also you can do it through frequent execution. Also, you can make sure that you can work offline without even sitting in front of the system, or even switching off the monitor, or even you can go ahead with headless invocation also. Without even triggering out the browser, you can work on. It is not that dependent like what you see in QTP, where you have to keep your desktop on, and you don't have to have any other activities going on when the automation is running. That is not going to be there in case of Selenium. Selenium gives you much better aspects. With respect to the programming language, as I was telling you, it supports multiple language bindings like, say, Java, Python, C Sharp, PHP, Ruby, Perl, JavaScript, Kotlin, Golang, and so on. With respect to OS support, you have multiple OS like Windows, Mac, Linux, iOS, Android. Even Symbian also was supported once upon a time, but unfortunately, it was not taken too much into consideration because of not having an active development there. With respect to browsers, you name the browsers, it has a support to that. Like, say, even the classic older type browsers like, say, IE, or the latest browsers with the latest technologies like Firefox, Chrome, Safari, Opera, Chromium browser, Edge browser, Brave browser, anything you name, you can use those browsers. Advantages, majorly, if you talk about, it is open source. I'm talking about the Selenium here. It's going to be supporting multiple language, multiple OS, multiple browsers, executes parallel execution. I mean, if you can do the parallel execution, you can integrate with any kind of frameworks like, say, TestNG, JUnit, NUnit, PyRest, PyTest, PyUnit. you name the framework you with the language binding you can work on with. The only disadvantage is it's only supports the web application part, so desktop related application cannot be evaluated. Some people say that it is very difficult to use, but to be very honest, it's very easy to set up and it's very easy to use also. Only thing is you need to have a very good coding to work on with that. Additionally, Selenium does not give you its own reporting facility, so you have to have your integrated like, say, reporting, just like say JUnit or TestNG or NUnit or PyTest reporting structure, or you can go ahead with additional things like Clove reporting or extended reporting, or you can go ahead with any other reporting which you are interested to work on. And image testing is not supported, just like what you can see the image to image comparison part. Otherwise, web application, what you talk about, it has so much control that no other application has in the current market. You compare with any other tools, this gives you one of the best advantages you can not even imagine, to be very honest. Completely free of cost, it is open source, it is having support from the entire community, means to say entire world. Anybody can pitch in and can try to solve the problem for you when you are asking the questions on the open platforms like Google Groups or Stack Overflow and so on. The hardware usage is comparatively very less, very good in terms of the use cases. Only thing is you should have a very good coding experience, and rest everything is like a marvelous thing for you people to work on with. I've been using it from 2005 and till date. That was the best decision which I've taken, and I've been working completely on the plug and play perspective. It is awesome. So when it comes to the application, we have locator strategy. In locator strategy, we have 8 locator strategy: ID, name, class name, tag name, then CSS, XPath, link text, and partial link text. So these are the 8 locator strategy you have in Selenium. Out of that, we are going to focus on to this XPath now. To be very honest, XPath is one of the best locator identification strategy, and you can identify any element using XPath. XPath usually stands for XML path at the backend, and it is completely based upon the HTML document query, which you can talk about like XML query documentation. It can be so good in identifying the locator strategy because it actually queries the DOM structure, and you can put up lot of expression to identify any kind of XPath expression, whether it is having a valid input or whether it is not having a let's say valid input to identify the element directly. Meaning to say, sometimes you might not have a proper attribute to identify. Sometimes there might be duplication. Sometimes it might be dynamic, and so on. Any category you can think of, this is one best tool which can work without any hassles here. So you can query it very easily because it's completely an XML documentation. If you're aware of XML or if you're aware of HTML, you can understand this very easily. The querying part completely comes from the XML perspective. In an XML, you can go ahead and you can try to draw the hierarchy, and the same thing is applicable for HTML also. And based upon that, you can do a lot of expression. You can go ahead with direct calls, you can go with indirect calls, you can go with relationship calls, and so on. Many things are going to come into picture, to be very honest. So let's try to look a very good impression here. Let's say if you're going with an bookstore, you can go ahead with different categories like say business categories, cooking categories, children categories, and so on. Under that, you can go ahead, like say much more depth, like say a cooking book, Everyday Chinese, or maybe like say by author K.S. Bose, or maybe like say to go with children category, you can go with title like Harry Potter, or you can go with the same book with author Mr. J.K. Rowling, and so on. So that way you can identify any element very easily with kind of the let's say XPath expression. So in XPath expression, you have lot many things like you have absolute path, you have relative path, you have functions like say contains, starts with, or text, combination of it, or maybe you can go ahead with access, or you can go with advanced functions like say combining 2 or more options, and so on. Many things are going to be there in terms of identifying a locator. I'll show you some examples which can help you out if possible in the hands-on section. So majorly, if you talk about the XPath, queries are very compact. It's very easily parsed by any browser. You can easily read and type and evaluate. You can check out if there is any, let's say, nodes are getting repeated, or you can go ahead with identifying the uniqueness of the element by giving a simple expression or complex expression. You can create common cases, and also you can identify any node in the documentation very easily. So that's one of the beauty of XPath here. Many people may not understand in the first stage what exactly this is, but if you go ahead with a little bit depth of understanding, you can see lot many things here. Usually the syntaxes and terminologies which can be used is going to be coming up with respect to single slash or double slash, which is going to be giving you the relative path or absolute path, the tag name of the HTML tag. Under the square bracket, you can give the attribute with @ symbol and the value, and you can identify the XPath very easily. And you can query it on the system itself to check whether it is going to give you proper XPath definition or not. So let's say the type of XPath, you can go with absolute XPath, relative XPath. Absolute XPath starts from the base node. Relative XPath starts from dynamically at any point in time with double slash here. We at Edureka, we take it in a different format to teach all these things. So it is very structured in terms of teaching any subject here. So as the Selenium training, first we'll deal with the basic language which you're going to take up along with the Selenium. For example, if you're talking about Selenium and Java, we'll give a basic introduction to Java here, though it is not called for, but we do a value-added service here so that you can get good introduction there before starting the course. And then we'll go ahead with discussing about the Selenium and its components with Suite. Third one, we'll be discussing about the locator strategy, setting up the project, working the basic coding, and evaluating the elements. Then we'll go ahead with handling the web elements, like say different codes, like say browser commands or WebDriver commands, web element commands or navigational commands. And we also have the synchronization code, like say waits there, which is going to be talking in which we're going to talk about like say implicit wait, explicit wait, script load timeout, page load timeout, and fluent wait, complete and so on. Then we'll be discussing about the framework for managing the test workflow using TestNG. We'll go ahead with complete detailed explanation about TestNG there. And we'll talk about the next component, Selenium IDE and Selenium Grid. After that, we'll talk about the drawbacks of Selenium, how to solve them using different options. And one of the examples which you can quote here is robot class or securely or auto it. Then we'll talk about the complete modeling of the pages, which is called as page object modeling, which is the design pattern which is automatically shipped along with Selenium product. And finally, we'll go ahead with complete hands-on with respect to automation framework, framework 1, framework 2, framework 3, which is completely like data-driven keyword and hybrid. And finally, we'll also have integrations with keyword and hybrid framework development using BDD format, and we take up Cucumber and deal with that. So this is what we have in the entire Selenium training course. So let's get into the XPath. So XPath, if you talk about, you have like say absolute and relative path as the first section. Then you have functions like say stats with or let's say contains or text and so on. You can go ahead evaluating one by one. Stats with will tell you the attribute starting with, contains will give you the options like say starting with or ending with or in between, and text, whatever text is which is getting displayed on the screen, you can take those things and you can work on with. Okay, so let me give a simple explanation here how it's going to be there and you can work on. All right, let's say Eclipse here. Let me create a simple project. Let's say something like okay, we'll take up the Maven project itself for better perspective so that you can understand it. I can even finish it very easily. Let's create a simple project and let's say we give it as a com.edureka. All these things will be taught in the session. So this is just an heads up because I cannot go ahead everything in 1 hour. I'm trying to leverage it as much as possible. So let's give the artifact ideas, let's say XPath webinar, and give XPath webinar, copy the same thing and paste it here. Let it get completed. Once it is there, you can go ahead and you can open up them, go to form.xml file. Let's try to add up dependencies here. And I need to add Selenium dependency. So let's go to Maven repository. search for Selenium, take the latest version, delete it, Control A, Control Shift F for formatting, save it, right click, run as Maven install. The build is successful. I need to have the driver, so let me take up the drivers here. We'll create a folder here, something like drivers folder. Then we need to download it. Let's go download it. Selenium.dev website. Go to the downloads, come down and go to the browsers. Let's say I'm going to take up Chrome browser. Click on documentation, and you have this latest stable version 99. Download the Windows version and unzip it. Once it is unzipped, let me copy the exe file, place it here. So now the exe file is there. Let's try to do the coding. So let me create a package, something like test package. And in here, let me write a class, let's say XPath demo. I'm going to write a basic class here, which is Java class, not the TestNG part. Let me create an object. In here, we always tend to take up the standard coding practice. We don't want to go ahead with something which Java doesn't recommend. So I'm used to it and I'll take up the same kind of coding aspects here. Let's say this is, I'll add up a method, something like public void setup browser, and let's say I'm going to open up something called as string browser here, string URL, and let me say in current directory is equal to, I want to get this let's say I want to get this project data. I can go ahead with something like say system dot get property. The property name is user.dir, the Java system property, which I'm trying to do it here. So if I want to get Chrome browser or Firefox browser, based on that, I can go with conditioning here, something like if browser dot equals ignore case, and let's say Chrome, then let's open up the Chrome browser here. So system dot set property, the key value pair, WebDriver dot Chrome dot driver, and I want to get current directory plus this directory drivers and exe file associated here. So let's try to associate that drivers / Chrome driver dot exe. Now this will set up the property for us. After that, we are going to start off the driver. So let's define the driver here as a instance variable, WebDriver driver, and associate here with instantiation as new Chrome driver. Now it's all good to go, and we'll try to import this. Now we'll open up the URL. Whatever URL you're going to give, the same URL I'm going to open up here at the moment. So for now, I'm going to write only one condition. Please provide valid browser and open up the URL driver dot get the URL. In here, I'm trying to do the coding, which is going to be very depth, but I wanted to show you some example here. That's the reason. But you have to understand all this coding, for which we'll take up step-by-step process in the training part. But anyways, let me go ahead here. Obj dot setup browser. Let me go ahead with, like, say, Chrome browser here, and let me set up the URL, something like https www.facebook.com. I'll take up the Facebook as an example here. Let's try to see if it works here. This is majorly opening up a browser and opening up the URL. So it works like a charm. Now we'll try to go ahead and identify the elements and we'll try to work on with fb.com. I want to identify some element here. Okay, so there are various attributes here, like say ID, name, class, type, data test ID, area label, autofocus, placeholder, and so on. I can take up anything here to work on. Let's say I want to go ahead with absolute path. I can go ahead typing everything from starting from HTML to body and so on, all the way down till here. Or I can take up something like this. Let me copy this, full XPath, and try to paste that here. Let's say public void demo method. I can go ahead with first element like web element email with absolute path description like driver.find element by xpath and give this entire xpath here completely. It might be a little bit big, so let me try to put it something which is going to be visible for you. Let me import it. I'm going to use this email element now to type in the data, something like say email dot send keys and say dan@gmail.com, and let's try to run this now. Obj dot send, like say demo method, run it. As you can see, this gets identified and you can see that whatever I have given is getting entered. Now let's try to go ahead with relative path. The same thing I'm going to write it with relative path now. Web element email is equal to driver.find element by xpath, and in here I'm going to add up the relative path. So relative path here will always starts with something like this. Let me copy this. And let me try to paste this value here. So when you want to design any relative path or any XPath expression, the XPath expression is going to be / tag name, open and close bracket, @ attribute, and the value against that. So let's say for this condition, I can go with something like this is a tag name. So / input, then @ any attribute here, type, class, name, ID, anything you can take it up. At the moment, let me say I'm going to go ahead with ID, and the value against that here is email. I can enter the same thing. Now copy this XPath and try to paste it here. Now I should be able to identify the element and I should be able to work on with that. Something like this. Or you might have some other function like web element email is equal to driver.find element by xpath. Maybe let me take a simple function, something like the same combination with the function here. Function will be something like this. Similar way of writing it, but this is the place where things will go changed. I'm going to put it inside a circular bracket, common bracket. The is equal to is something which we're going to remove, and we're going to put a comma, and we're going to add up some, like say, relevant information, something like say contains or starts with, something like that. So here I can give partial information like this, and I can go ahead and paste that value here. There are various examples. This is just a simple example which can help you out to understand what I'm trying to achieve. Now with this, if I run, you should be able to see that it works. Something like this. So there are different options like this in which we are going to discuss. To be very honest, we discuss somewhere around only for the element aspects, we discuss somewhere around 150 to 300 examples to identify the elements in different categories and different ways of writing the expression, and different ways to identify one single element itself. With that, you'll get complete knowledge about how to work on and how to do the job. If you are using it for testing, you can use it with Selenium and testing. If you are using it for web scraping, you can use the same context for web scraping also. For example, I want to get something like what is there on this particular welcome message. So let's me try to go ahead with the inspection of this element, which is H2, and it has something called as Facebook starts with. So let's try to write this expression, something like, say, this is H2 and this is Facebook here. So let's say I'm going to comment this out and comment this out also. Let me write another expression, something like, say, web element welcome message is equal to driver dot find element by dot xpath and say /h2, then stats hyphen with open close bracket, let's say text, comma, the initial text value, something like this. And now let me try to print the output. Sys out. I want to get this entire text. I'm giving partial value like this, and I want to get the entire text which is getting displayed on the screen. So let's try to get that message. Welcome message is equal to plus the welcome message element dot get text. This should help us to identify the complete information. And as you can see, whatever is getting displayed on the screen in here, so whatever information is here, the same information is getting displayed in here. This is what we do in web scraping. Okay, so this is a basic introduction to XPath and its use cases. I've tried to leverage it with a smaller example here so that you get a idea how to work on with XPath, but we go depth in the session, so I cannot take up the complete depth here. I hope you have got a little basic idea about how to work on with XPath. Thank you so much for attending the session.